What does Israel as a nation stand for? What are their values? And how do they relate to America?
Israel is the front lines in this clash of civilizations and this battle between Judeo-Christian values, Western civilization, and all of the forces that oppose it, this very strange coalition between Islamism and socialism, communism. And Israel stands as a bastion, a beacon of light in the Middle East that is the front lines of that battle. Just turn on your TV and look at what flags they're burning. They are burning the Israeli flag, but they are also burning the American flag. This is anti-Western, this is anti-democracy, this is anti-freedom, and it's anti-God and people that stand for those values.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I am joined with my husband, Jonathan, and Simeon Myers. Thanks for being here.
Hey, I'm trying
Thanks for having me.
have my voice deep like his.
There's no hope for me.
Yeah, you don't even worry about it.
I got up at like 4:30 this morning, so it's extra deep today.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to the audio version, you'll really enjoy Simeon's voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, the reason he's here. No, the real reason we are here, Simeon, is because there's so much talk going on in the digital world and in media about Israel. It seems like everyone's talking about Israel. And I think one of the things that it's important for us, for the podcast, because we do it together, is to be a reliable and truthful and biblically grounded source about Israel and what's going on in Israel. And, most people are, especially millennials and younger, they are not really watching the news. They are online. They are on TikTok. They are on Instagram. So we try to create content to reach those people. And a lot of times in small,
Short form.
yeah, because let's be honest, I love short form. So, but we also do long form. And so we are having you on because you are, I don't know if you call yourself an expert, but you are knowledgeable about the geopolitical climate in Israel and what's going on. And so that's why we have you here. So thanks for being here.
Well, one of the things that Dave Smith established in the infamous Douglas Murray, if anyone watched the debate and podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yes.
Dave Smith established that whether you are an expert or not, you have the right to speak on these topics. So I'll let the audience decide.
It seems like a lot of these people that are quote unquote experts are actually wrong about this specific subject. So I'm glad that we're doing this because I think it's really important, and it's foundational, not just from a biblical perspective, but really from like a Western civilization, democracy, freedom perspective, because you have Israel, that's this pluralistic society in the middle of the Middle East, surrounded by
Enemies,
but also radical Islam, which is not a pluralistic society. They are not for freedom. They are not only call for death, but they literally teach death in their school systems. And so there's this polar opposite, right? So in this region, so much so that, you have Israel the time that we're recording this has been in this conflict for talking about October 7th, but leading into the 12-day war for, I guess, over 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So over 2 years, they've been in this conflict.
Well, yeah, coming up to that.
Coming up to 2 years, it's hard to keep track.
It
feels like it's been 10 years.
The conflict's been going on for a very, very long time.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's really always been contentious. And what you have is people coming online saying that Israel is for killing civilians. Israel is doing mass genocide. Israel is, keeping them from humanitarian aid. All of these things that are trying to demonize a nation state and a people group. And now, listen, we're not saying that everything that the government does is correct in Israel. We're not saying that they're flawless. We're just saying, let's look at the facts. Let's look at the truth. What does Israel as a nation stand for? What are their values? And how do they relate to America?
There seems to be quite a bit of confusion these days around the most simplistic things. Who is your friend and who is your enemy?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it that shares your value system for democracy and freedom and respect for life and the dignity of all peoples? And conversely, who is your enemy? Who seeks to undermine and overthrow the systems that lead to the lifestyle that we are so privileged to live here in the West? And it's important to note that there is a World War III that's been going on for decades now, and we stand to lose right now. And what's interesting is Israel. Why is Israel, this country the size of New Jersey, with 7.2 million Jews, dominating the news cycles?
I know. I've thought about that.
Why is it? With all of the unrest, there are over 100 wars being fought around the world right now. Do people even know about them? People don't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
But when you compare Israel to places, continents, the size of Africa and the unrest and the, just so many things that are happening globally, why is Israel front and central? And it really, people should be asking that question and then realizing it is because Israel is the front lines in this clash of civilizations and this battle between Judeo-Christian values, Western civilization, liberal democracy, and all of the forces that oppose it, this very strange coalition between wokeism, if you would, or extreme progressivism, left-wing progressivism, Islamism, and socialism, communism. And those forces have coalesced to declare war on our way of living. And Israel stands as a bastion, a beacon of light in the Middle East that is the front lines of that battle. And it is for that reason that I write places like Iran in their parliament every day chant death to Israel and death to America. And contrary to what Tucker Carlson says, they mean it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's we can unpack a lot there, and it's up to you guys where you want to take this thing. We can talk about death toll in Gaza or whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. I think that you've actually made a really important connection, though, because it was weird to see these groups come together with Islam and then wokeism, and because it's like morally they would be enemies.
No.
But yet they are banding together. And I'm like, what would get these people to come together? But maybe it is that common enemy of Judeo-Christian values and democracy.
Absolutely. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. So it should be perplexing.
Yeah.
To the Western world, these movements, Queers for Palestine, for instance, and whatever your perspective on homosexuality is, I'm not here to argue any of that. It's illegal. Mm-hmm. To be a homosexual in any of the Islamic states, punishable by law and punishable by death. And they throw people in Palestine off of rooftops. And you heard it said. But not only that, let's not talk about some of those more controversial. What about just women's rights? Women are subjugated across most of the Middle East. Women are treated as property.
Terrible.
Don't have rights to vote. And some of even the moderate-leaning states, they aren't allowed to drive cars, have driver's licenses. Where is the shared value system there?
Yeah.
And why is nobody talking about it? Israel celebrates freedom. Many of our parliament members are and have been women. We had the first female prime minister in the world, Golda Meir, and nobody's focusing on that. And so we should be scratching our heads and saying, what's going on? And then, as mentioned before, if you look at the Free Palestine movement and just look, just turn on your TV and look at what flags they're burning. They are burning the Israeli flag, but they are also burning the American flag.
Right.
This is anti-Western. This is anti-democracy. This is anti-freedom, and it's anti-God and people that stand for those values.
I think the other thing, too, when you're talking about parliaments and Israel's Knesset is what it's called, they literally have people that are Knesset members that call for the destruction of Israel. I mean, that is how far they have taken democracy, that they include every group into their Knesset.
You're saying that in Israel's government, they value and include all kinds of thinkers and political parties. They have way more political parties than America. So it's a true democracy.
Yeah. We have Arab Supreme Court justices that are able to rule, that have sent some of our prime ministers to jail, to prison. Think about this for a minute. So the notion that it's an apartheid state is
That was actually
just
one of my
absolutely
questions.
absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Can you define what an apartheid is and why they're putting that definition on
Apartheid was a
Israel?
term that was really coined for what was happening in South Africa, and there is literally no correlation. Literally no correlation whatsoever. You can be of any walk of life in Israel and experience, as long as you recognize Israel's sovereignty, you can experience all the benefits and rights. And many, well, let me just say a couple things. So about 20% of Israelis, Israeli population, are Arabs, Muslims. And many of them serve in the IDF. You never hear anybody talk about it. There's a wealth of history, goes back to whether or not they recognize the state of Israel, in 1948 and so on and so forth. And I will also say there are some extreme complexities to this that are very, very nuanced that have to do with the way, and so you can't correlate with precision what we experience here in the West and this country that is, roughly 80 years old, and the diverse people groups that live there, and the massive population swaps that took place, towards the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, and then these allegiances, and you hear these terms like occupied. The occupied territories, or Israel is occupying these lands, and there are actual legal terms, but nobody, you don't ever hear anyone talk about who occupied those regions prior to Israel. If you look at the West Bank, if you look at Gaza, the West Bank, who had it before Israel had it? Jordan. Jordan occupied it, right? It was literally an occupation, and it was freed by Israel. It wasn't occupied by Palestinians. There was never a Palestinian state there or anything like that. In Gaza, it was Egypt that occupied it. And so these terms are so misused because people don't understand the complexities and the nuance. And I don't think we have time to unpack probably all of that here. But I would encourage people, you've got a wealth of opportunity to research at your fingertips. Just go to ChatGPT and start asking questions if you want. And you'll be surprised what you find about these different terms. But Israel is unequivocally not an apartheid state. You can experience all of the freedoms regardless of your faith, regardless of your ethnicity. So yeah.
We know that in 1948, Israel was reestablished as a nation state, but the Jewish presence in that land, in that region, dates back to 2,000 years. And can you speak to, why this wasn't a random moment? This actually makes sense, like politically, why the UN voted at that time to recognize Israel as a nation.
Yeah, and I'm no expert on it, but I will say this: here's what we know is, there have always been Jews in the land. So Jews were never completely driven out of the land of Israel, and there was actually, there's so much focus on 1948 because that's when Israel declared independence, and they were able to do so legally. Okay, and it was legally binding. And actually, I just did a podcast with Natasha Hausdorff, who truly is an expert on these issues, and she can just rattle off Latin. She's really remarkable. I don't know if anyone has seen her, but and she talked about how the borders in these types of situations are actually defined, and they're usually defined historically by the border that existed previously. So I encourage people to listen to that podcast, listen to what she has to say, and determine for yourself how you feel about it. But, there were massive population swaps in the late 1800s, long before 1948, when Jews were expelled from all of the surrounding regions, completely expelled from Iraq and Yemen and all these different countries, and made their way back to Israel. And this is long before 1948, and established communities, Rishon LeZion and Petah Tikva, and some of these communities and cities that exist today that are Hebrew, were founded long before 1948. So this entire narrative is crafted It is misinformation, disinformation, history revision. And we're seeing it here. Those of us, again, that share our values, we're seeing it here in the United States. Same thing. History revisionism. And it really is an affront to our value systems. And it's important for us to understand this is intentional. This is deliberate. This unrest that we're seeing is not by accident. It's deliberate.
For someone who doesn't know the history of where Gaza and all that came from, can you give a brief explanation of how that even happened?
How Gaza became a Hamas stronghold that it is today?
Well, yeah, because before, I think people think that Israel has just forced all these people to be here and they're basically oppressing them. But they asked for that land and Israel gave it to them. So can you explain that history?
Yeah, so there's biblical Zionism and there's political Zionism. So you've got, again, biblical Zionism, political Zionism. Many that believe in biblical Zionism, and some of them are considered radical fringes in Israel that make up a very small percentage. And this is where you hear about settlers and these people that just believe the Bible says that this land all belongs to us and we're going to go take it. We're going to settle there, so on and so forth. And that is a very contentious perspective. I'm not here to really give my opinion on that one way or the other. It's just a reality. But some of these settlers at one point were settling in Gaza, and they actually made the desert bloom. It was really amazing and remarkable what they built there. I used to host tours and bring people down there to actually see literal oasis in the desert with crops, and it was just amazing. And
really, you saw it yourself?
Oh yeah. And we would.
When was
we
this?
never really gave context for what ages did you live in Israel?
Yeah.
To give a little context around that.
Right. So my parents moved to Israel from the United States when I was 16 years old in 1992. Just to put it in the Gaza context, I was 16 in 1992 when they moved there. In 2005, in an effort for peace, Israel made the determination, it was very controversial in Israeli society, to remove all of the settlers and leave Gaza and turn it over to the Palestinians completely and allow them to rule there, have their own government, their own military. It differs from what is called the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. We can talk about that a little bit too. But so they actually forcefully expelled, because the settlers didn't want to go, right? And they had built homes and they had made this beautiful oasis in the desert. But Israel, in an effort for peace, forcefully expelled them militarily. Literally, we went in, and you can go back and watch the videos, and forcefully expelled.
It was tragic.
It was tragic. To the people that were living there, it was absolutely tragic. And what happened afterwards was even more tragic. In 2006, they held their first quote-unquote democratic election. It wasn't really democratic, but I would say that a majority, I would contest that it would seem, based on polling today, that a majority of people did support Hamas at the time. And Hamas, anyway, we don't have to get into all of the history there, but essentially Hamas came to power and has been in power since 2006. Hamas, they immediately destroyed, instead of taking this beauty that was built.
Greenhouses and orchards, they could have farming.
They could have further cultivated, further expounded on it, built on it. That was our hope. Right, that they would have their own country and we would peacefully coexist side by side. And it's important to note that these communities that were attacked, this is so important and so sad, that these communities that were attacked on October 7th were essentially peace camps. Mm-hmm. These were communities that believed in that and lived there, hoping to live peacefully with their neighbors. But since 2006, Hamas immediately started firing missiles into Israel. And they started building a terror infrastructure. Mm-hmm. They are not committed to peace. They don't believe in a two-state solution. And this is why Israel's so criticized. Why isn't there a two-state solution? We don't have a partner that wants a two-state solution.
It's not an option, really.
Right. That's not on the table as far as they're concerned. They explicitly say that, and then they back it up with every means possible, the destruction and annihilation of Israel. They have shot, I believe it's between 40 and 50,000 missiles into Israel before October 7th. From the time that we gave it over. And I will say that there were many mistakes that were made on October 7th, and I think leading up to October 7th, and Israelis are aware of it, the Israeli government is aware of it. We're looking into what happened, and there were intelligence failures and so on and so forth, and there's a lot behind all of that. But I would say one of the most dangerous things that happened was the precedent that was set, allowing a neighbor like that to consistently fire missiles on our civilian population. And basically the idea was we intercept most of them. Occasionally one falls in a populated area, but it's minimal casualties. So minimal loss of life. I personally have a friend, and his brother was one of the hostages that we did a lot of work on their behalf in collaboration with Daystar. Thank you so much for that. The Shimriz brothers. But when he was 14 years old, he saw a man killed right in front of him, 14-year-old, by one of these rockets, literally right in front of him, a rocket hit. And Israel allowed that precedent to be set. There's no other country in the world that would allow their civilian populations to be fired upon. And again, sort of the logic was, well, it doesn't do a ton of damage. It would be really hard to undo, and the cost would be, we'd be so scrutinized. Exactly everything that you're seeing today unfold after October 7th will be so scrutinized by the rest of the world. And so they allowed that to happen. And that's some of what led up to what happened on October 7th. So I don't know if that's helpful enough. There are so many layers to all of this. But.
So my question is, what is the difference between Gaza and the West Bank? And when Israel was made a nation in 1948, did Israel own that land and did they give it over? Or how, what is the dynamics? Because there's people who don't understand this conflict at all. They don't understand the history at all. And that's one of the reasons why they're being led astray.
In 1948, there was a partition plan that was put in place by the League of Nations, and it was rejected by the Arabs in the region, mostly. Not all of them, but mostly. And those are the regions that were in question. There was to be a two-state solution from the beginning, but from the beginning, the Arabs in the region rejected that solution. And so it was never fully implemented. Okay, and I'm not an expert in international law that can comment. And there are people that can explain all of this much better than I can. But essentially, there were some Arab communities that accepted Israel's sovereignty, and as such became part of Israel. And we have many friends in that community. Many friends in that community have served with these people in the IDF. And they are able to experience all of the rights, full benefits of citizenship in Israel. And then what happened is in the West Bank, there are these zones, A, B, and C. And they have varied degrees of Israeli sovereignty, I guess would be the best way to put it. And one of the big differences is that Israel allowed in the West Bank them to police themselves. That's in some of these zones. Whereas in Gaza, they just handed it over completely and let them govern themselves completely.
Okay.
And so that's one of the major differences there. And then there are these different zones within the West Bank where Israel has varied degrees of sovereignty, varied degrees of residency. So some of the areas that are being settled in are legally completely under Israeli sovereignty. And again, this is a manufactured story. Many people, many legal scholars and experts would argue that Israel actually has a right to all of it on certain criteria that have to do with exploits of war and all types of different things that have happened over the course of the history of all of this. For Israel, much of it, and this is what's lost on much of the world, is a matter of existence. Some of these quote-unquote occupied territories are strategic militarily and just have to be run by Israel. But even the Palestinian Authority, that's who rules the West Bank, has been presented as an option as a peace partner. They have programs in play. I'm sure you've heard the phrase pay to slay programs. Literally, they have programs in place where if you carry out a terroristic attack on Israeli civilians, your family is remunerated for the rest of their lives. If you kill Israelis, and they have actually breakdowns. Anyone can find this information. How much it is to actually carry out an attack? How much it is if you kill one person or two people? How much it is if you lose your life? How much does your family benefit if you become a suicide bomber? And it's disgusting. It's sick, and they are not a peace partner. So this is the predicament that we're faced with and who is the peace partner? Now, I want to bring some hope into this too. And I don't want to just monologue here, but I know our time is always limited and these conversations could go a million different directions. There's an interesting irony taking place right now globally and having to do specifically with what's happening in the greater Middle East and then also across Western civilized cities, universities, etc. And that is that the moderate-leaning states in the Middle East are moving towards what they call normality or normalizing relations with Israel. And a lot of this, it's been going on for actually decades, collaboration behind closed doors, okay? Because many of these moderate-leaning states in the Gulf want to live in peace. And they see actually benefits in collaborating with Israel militarily and economically and so on and so forth. And that is their genuine desire. Now, I say it's been going on for decades, and they have something that's kind of funny called Israeli mistress syndrome, where they collaborate behind closed doors, but it's kind of like, it's great, it leads to good outcomes. It's fun. Yeah, but we're not going to bring this home to mom, And so that's what they've called it. But then this became much more explicit through the Abraham Accords. And they began to formalize these relationships. And one thing that you don't hear enough about, just very recently, Saudi Arabia came out, for instance, and said, we want to normalize our relationship with Israel on this one condition. Do you guys know about this? You know what the condition is?
I don't.
That Hamas is no longer in power in Gaza. It wasn't that Israel do X, Y, and Z. They know that Hamas, as a proxy of Iran, has an unsettling presence and is constantly dedicated to violence and upheaval and intifada and all these different things. And they made their condition of normalizing relations with Israel that Hamas is no longer in power. And so what you see is very positive shifts and momentum that are taking place throughout the Middle East in terms of normalization of relationship with the surrounding states. And this conflict, for the first time in history recently, you see a divergence of the Arab states from the Palestinian cause because they know the truth. This is not about Palestinian human rights. It never has been. It is not about a land dispute. This is a battle of ideologies. This is about radicalism. This is versus just living normal life, et cetera, et cetera. And they know that, and they don't want that radicalism anymore. So it's interesting, though, to observe that across the Middle East, Israel now has these treaties in place. If you look at the 12-day war, for instance, Israel collaborated with some of its neighbors.
Right. Didn't Jordan help?
Was shooting down missiles that were coming from Iran and Yemen and so on and so forth. And that has been the case since October 7th.
And did Egypt help as well?
Yes. And it's very controversial, right? Some of these relationships. But so you have this positive movement that would seem extremely hopeful. Wait a minute. And then across Western civilization, you see something that we never thought we would see in our life, this absolute campaign of disinformation, misinformation, undermining, delegitimizing Israel. And it should merit pause and just, what is going on here? Like, there is actually a real chance for this thing that every president has been trying to solve for my entire lifetime, peace in the Middle East. And here we are at the precipice of this, where there's greater opportunity than there has ever been before. And if you want to know why October 7th happened when it did, that's why. It was meant to upset that actual long-lasting peace and real solution to the problem. And the people that are behind it are against it. This is just, again, painting this picture, are against Western civilization. They're against peace. They're against the things that we stand for. And that's why you see these protests across the Western world.
Yeah. I want to ask who that is, but you don't want to say who.
What is?
Who's against peace in the Middle East? Like,
well, the Iranian regime is probably the
Iran,
number one.
Russia, China, North Korea, all of these totalitarian regimes, radical Islamism, not all Islam, not all Muslims, but radical Islamism.
Which groups or which countries embody that?
So this gets controversial when you start to talk about these things, and it can be disputed, okay? What we know is Iran is behind it. And
Are they the most powerful?
Questionable.
Okay.
Questionable. They're in the limelight. Qatar is really the fuel behind.
Because they have the money?
Iran, their money. It's a tiny country, very oil rich, 300,000 people. It's almost like the anti-Israel in a way, with more influence on the planet than anyone is aware of today, for the most part, unless you really understand what's going on.
Can you speak to some of their influence?
They own more land in Great Britain than the royal family. Do you like Valentino and Balmain? fashion brands? You look very fashionable.
I know those fashion brands.
They own them.
She's like, Jonathan won't let me buy
Yeah.
them.
I'll
I don't even know
probably
what they
never
are.
own anything designer.
Well, they own them.
Well, that's why you're not buying them.
They own Saint Germain soccer team. They own that has Messi,
Wow.
the most secular. They own Al Jazeera. They own portions of BBC. They own half of Heathrow Airport.
What?
They own enormous amounts of real estate here in the United States. They've been investing in our education system for decades illegally.
What?
It's coming out now because everyone's looking at what's happening across our halls of education.
Right.
Well, what we know now is they've invested billions in our education system here in the United States. And it's not only at the collegiate level, it is now in our K through 12. You're starting to see Israel disappear on maps in classrooms in K through 12, and you're seeing
Wow.
Palestine, so on and so forth. And this needs to be a wake-up call. We need to understand what's happening here, understand again that this is deliberate. And they also have invested in some of the Christian nationalist right-wing people that have been mentioned here.
Oh.
Wait, do we know that for a fact, or is it just speculated?
Well, here's what we do know for a fact. Tucker Carlson's network, the seed money came from a guy named Omid Malik. Look it up, people. Omid Malik, who's a Pakistani Iranian. He's Pakistani Iranian descent, put up $15 million to start that network. We know that for a fact. It's public knowledge. We know that there was a nonprofit in here in the United States that receives its funding from Qatar that pays $180,000 a month, and they paid Tucker to interview the Emir, I believe it was, of Qatar, so on and so forth. So it's unquestionable. We know that there are trips. Tucker's been to Qatar recently. He said it openly. He said it, and we can go through some of those clips if you want. He said it openly at Turning Point. Piers Morgan recently in Qatar, et cetera, et cetera. And so,
What?
yes.
What is Qatar? Is Qatar extreme in their Islam?
They play both sides very well, and it's very, very controversial here in the United States because one of our largest Air Force bases is in Qatar.
Really?
Yeah. And so they play both sides very, very well. But here's what we know for certain. They openly, since October 7th, have given hundreds of millions of dollars to Hamas. 350 million for sure, like right after it, they approved to go to Hamas. All of the leaders of Hamas were living in Qatar. These billionaires, these people that took foreign financial aid and became billionaires, they all lived in Doha, in Qatar. That's where they ruled from. The ruling class of Hamas lived in Qatar. Now, we recently took a bunch of those guys out. Some were visiting Iran when we did it, so on and so forth. But they play both sides, but they have a radical agenda. And the other moderate-leaning states in the Gulf acknowledge that and admit that. And then you have Iran. So they're kind of the bank account with a flag, if you would.
Yeah.
And then they support Iran, who has these proxies,
Right.
Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. You know, you talk about
Where are the Houthis?
the Houthis are Yemen.
Yemen.
You talk about famine and all this talk about children starving and so on and
Yeah.
so forth, and all of the aid that Israel's trying to get and has gotten into Gaza. And we can talk about that and what a unique situation that is globally. That
Yeah.
Israel is expected and required to have more mercy, compassion, and provision for people that hate them and want to destroy them than the own ruling government of said people and the surrounding nations. Israel's held to this bizarre and unusual standard. But regardless,
It is so bizarre.
folks, Google how many children are starving in Yemen right now while Yemen is shooting missiles at Israel. They're wasting hundreds and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars attacking Israel at the expense of their own citizens. Just Google starvation in Yemen. I'm not going to say anything more about it. Take a look at it and start to really open your eyes and understand what's happening in the Middle East. This is all about radicalism. The destruction of Israel is all about destroying a way of life.
Why is that? What is the ideology? The belief? They see Israel as like the greatest enemy, and so they want to take, or they just want that land. What's driving them?
Israel is the origin of Judeo-Christian values. Where do the Ten Commandments come? Where do we get our morals here in the Western world? And the fact that Israel is a country again after millennia of diaspora, of dispersion around the world, is something that flies in the face of a way of life. And the fact that you can have capitalism and, free economy and freedom of speech and all of these different things that none of those countries have.
And that's a threat to them as well.
Of course, it's a threat to their way of life. They're all totalitarian regimes. And so it's absolutely a threat to their way of life. And then why have they coalesced with communism? Well, there was an alliance between communism and, Palestinians during World War II. Research it. Like you can find it out for yourself. So this is not new. The face of it is new, but they've come together because the one thing they have in common for certain, and now progressivism here in the United States, is they hate America. They hate our way of life, and they'll do anything they can to overthrow it. And in some ways, it's kind of simple. I mean, there are layers that get very complex, but in some ways, it's very simple.
Well, what's really interesting is that the narrative that I've seen so much online is that Israel, they are the bad guys. They're the ones doing all this, damage. They're immoral. And then it's interesting that you're talking about Qatar and all of this, how they're all kind of supporting one another and working together. And there's that manipulation. But the narrative online is Israel is manipulating the United States. And everyone keeps talking about, it's like the AIPC, or do you know what that is?
AIPAC.
AIPAC.
We could talk about AIPAC. It's a very important point. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Because there is all this unrest about AIPAC, and whether you agree, there's things I like and there are things I dislike about AIPAC. Doesn't really matter. My opinion doesn't really matter. Here are the facts. Okay, AIPAC is the United States has an agreement that involves laws of how influence can be conducted here in the United States on behalf of foreign countries, called FARA, and you have to register if you are lobbying. It's legal to lobby in the United States on behalf of foreign governments, but you have to register with FARA. This is at the crux of what's the controversy right now. So AIPAC is not registered with FARA, but the reason for that is because it isn't lobbying on behalf of the Israeli government. It's lobbying on behalf of strong relationship between Israel and the United States. So they believe that being pro-Israel is America first. It's the best thing for our society, which I happen to agree with. And so they are not lobbying on behalf of Bibi Netanyahu.
But that's what they're making you think online.
That's what they're making you think. But here's some facts that never get told. Even if you were, and Israel does have its own lobby, just so you know, that is registered with FARA. It's not AIPAC because it's not American. It is representing the Israeli government here, and it's a very, very tiny amount of money. You have to register, and how much money. It's all public knowledge how much money goes to these lobbies every year. But if you were to include all of the money that AIPAC has spent lobbying on behalf of this cause, a good relationship between Israel and the United States, I think the statistics are from between 2016 and 2024. It still wouldn't be, even if they were registered with FARA, it still wouldn't be in the top 10 countries with regard to how much investment they have made in our society. China is ahead of it. Qatar is ahead of it. And you can go right down the line. Just look it up. Look up the top 10 countries register with FARA for foreign lobbying. Look at the budgets, and AIPAC is not in there. So don't you think we should maybe be concerned more about not our greatest ally that shares our literal exact value system, and we're less concerned about these other foreign lobbies that are investing more than double the amount of money, and that's what they're doing legally and registered. But then we find out that they have unregistered funds, that they have billions that have gone to our universities, billions, hundreds of billions that have gone to our universities in unregistered funds. It's illegal. Where is the uproar about that?
Well, also, I don't even think the American people understand not just countries that are lobbying, but, you have pharmaceutical companies. I mean, there's tons of people pouring so much money, more than, like you said, AIPAC, significantly more, that they have no idea about. But it's like, that's why the media is so important, because there are people over here like Tucker, like these other people saying, hey, look at what they're doing. And they make someone evil, but there's no talk about all the other stuff that these other people are doing. Like, I've never heard about Qatar until this interview. Like, no one's talking about that. And even like one of the things that really frustrates me about the whole what's going on with Israel and everyone criticizing Israel is I'm like, look, there's so many other countries that are doing horrible things that no one talks about. We never talk about North Korea. about they're doing to their own people in the United States. It's been going on for years. What China's doing to their own people. I mean, and we don't talk about it at all in the media, and so it does seem very unfair, especially when Israel, I really feel like, is trying to do their due diligence and going way far above than what other countries even do. It's crazy, the injustice of it.
You are spot on. Google, just anyone can Google Christian persecution globally. Start looking up stats.
Yeah.
And there's no outrage. You don't even hear about it. You don't even know what's going on. How many hundreds of Christians are killed in Nigeria and these different countries.
In the Middle
real
East,
genocides
too.
in the Middle East,
And
real
in China.
genocides that are taking place. And then Israel accidentally hits a church because it's an active war zone, and they didn't mean to, and they knock off.
And there's a
piece
terror
of this.
tunnel that's below it that has, or a weapons cache below it.
Literally, and look, we don't want those things to happen, but you're scrutinized and criticized, and see, they hate Christians, they hate her, and it's like, no,
they don't.
And literally, you are silent in the face of actual persecution and genocide that's taking place all around the world.
And it really does an injustice to that exact thing, like what is actually happening. Because you see Israel, they have gone into Gaza to try and rescue these hostages that are being held hundreds of feet below ground in a terror tunnel network that spans 350 miles that's been being built since 2005. Once Hamas took power, they started building tunnels. It wasn't like they took some time to do it. It was essentially immediate that the greenhouses came down that he referenced, and they began to build a terror tunnel network because they knew that their ultimate plan was destruction of Israel, because they don't believe in life. They don't believe in preserving life the way Israel does.
Yeah.
And so they built a terror tunnel network. But now you see Israel going back into Gaza to rescue these people that have been taken, that are innocent, that are civilians, that are being held for almost 2 years now.
Crazy.
And they're
by the
going
way.
door to door through an urban military stronghold to try and preserve as many Gazans, Palestinians' lives as possible. It's wild. America would have gone about this differently, I believe. We probably would have leveled.
Look,
And Israel is just going above and beyond.
let's talk about the numbers a little bit, because you hear, and I want to say so clearly that it's a tragedy when just loss of life in general, and that's part of our value system. Jews and Christians, we value life, and it's tragic, the loss of life that's taking place in Gaza and in Israel. But some things to consider when you look at that situation. You hear all this talk about Israel targeting children and so on and so forth. First of all, there are a couple things to note. One, half of the population of Gaza, over 50% actually, of the population of Gaza is under the age of 18.
Wow.
Over half the population of Gaza is under the age of 18.
That's crazy.
Do you think that some of the combatants are underage combatants?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It stands to reason. And all of the numbers that are coming out of Gaza are coming from the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas. We already know Hamas is not a credible source of information, just in general. So there's some numbers. A couple other things to note, as you have so articulately stated, Hamas does not value the lives of Palestinian civilians and never has. They've built over 500 kilometers. To put that in perspective, these terror tunnels, they built over 500 kilometers of terror tunnels. That is longer than the underground in Great Britain, linear kilometers. It's longer, bigger than the underground. And they've built it as a terror infrastructure underneath civilian infrastructure, civilian populations. That's where it is. It's underneath homes, it's underneath churches, underneath mosques, it's underneath civilian infrastructure. They fight exclusively from civilian infrastructure, from these tunnels and from civilian infrastructure exclusively. This is a war that's unprecedented historically. Nothing like this has happened in the history of mankind. A war that's being fought exclusively in urban warfare, which is the worst kind of combat from a tactical perspective you can ever have.
Yeah.
And I want to point out a few things that you're probably never going to hear anyone else say anywhere. Very few people are talking about this. And I also want to say they have a civilian casualty strategy in place.
Totally.
Okay, so they benefit by civilian casualties because of the public opinion. They're able to persuade public opinion. They have these absolute fools here that are parroting their messaging and their talking points.
They've been caught opening fire into their own population. I don't want to take you off your train of thought.
No. They literally will kill their own population. There's no dissident voices in Gaza. There's no. I mean, this has been going on long. This has been going on since they've been in power. You can't speak against them. There's no freedom of speech. They'll kill you. So, but furthermore, they entrench themselves in these tunnels. Guess who's not allowed in the tunnels? Civilians. Not one. It's illegal to build a home in Israel without a bomb shelter. You have to. It's part of code.
Mm-hmm.
And Hamas has invested. They could be a utopia with what they've invested in this tunnel system underneath Gaza.
So much money.
They have no concern for civilian life. And Israel, think about what the world is saying, that we in the Western world and Israel have to care more about Palestinian civilian human life than their own government. And not only that, we have to put all the pieces in place to facilitate it. And while they're trying to simultaneously undermine it, you cannot have a bigger double standard than this. Like, you have to provide food and aid and all these different things to the population of Gaza, and we're going to try to steal and undermine all that food and aid while it's happening. It is so corrupt and unthinkable. Now, let's get back to the numbers. Sorry, I'm going on a rant here.
I like the rant. Rant away.
So, urban warfare. The worst type of warfare you can ever get. And talk to some of the vets that came back from the region that had to live under this constantly. It's just
Fallujah and these other places too, where the U.S. had to do it.
You're having to make the worst decisions that you could ever make and people tactical, you hear these analogies by Dave Smith. Oh, if my neighbor came over and punched me in the face, and I went across the street to, get back at him and he's holding his baby, I'm not going to punch him, because there's no equivalency. It does not equal what's happening in Israel or Gaza whatsoever. He has no knowledge or experience of tactical warfare, anything like this. You have to make split decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. Think about it in terms of your friends that serve in the military here. They're in a tactical situation where they have an enemy that's entrenched in civilian infrastructure. They have aerial imagery that depict a cannon, a rifle, a sniper, an RPG in a building, high-rise, whatever, a home, a mosque, whatever it may be, directed at troops on the ground that can't see them, right? And you have a split decision you have to make. Do I take out that terrorist or that threat and preserve the lives of my soldiers or not? It's yes or no. And what you don't know is what's behind that window. What you don't know is in the rest of that house. It's an impossibility. It is the nightmare of any tactician. And this is an entire war that's executed like this.
Right.
Simultaneously, tunnels are linear structures that are built underground, because people say, well, Israel has decimated 60% of civilian infrastructure in Gaza. That's because they built linear, tunnels, structures underground, and there's no other way to destroy them in a linear fashion, right? All that being said, statistics on urban warfare. Historically, the civilian casualty rate in civilian warfare, anyone can look this up. Is between 50 and 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
In urban warfare.
It's terrible.
And it's terrible. That's why nobody wants to be in it, because it's so deadly. It's so lethal. And then when you couple it with the fact that Hamas actually benefits from civilian casualties, and not only that, many of the people of Gaza are extremely radical. They worship martyrdom. Just look at what they say. They don't look at their children the way you and I look at our children. In the West, we think about it differently.
Mm-hmm.
They think about their children as a means to something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're radicalized, right? So they actually worship and intend to be martyrs. They explicitly say it. So you have all these things working. Israel, the death toll in Gaza right now, which again is tragic, is estimated to be between 57 and 60,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gaza claims that they're all civilians. No combatants have been killed. Hamas claims that no. It's insane, right?
Insane.
And I will say this, they don't fight in uniforms.
Right.
They fight in civilian clothing.
Yeah.
So they get to claim whatever they want. All that being said, between 57 and 60,000 estimated fatalities in Gaza. The population of Gaza is between 2.2 million people and 2.3 million people. So 60,000 is about 2.7% of the population.
Mm.
In a war that's been fought exclusively in urban warfare.
Mm-hmm.
where the average is 50 to 90%, and they've decimated inarguably 60% of the infrastructure to try to get the hostages back and to destroy this terror tunnel infrastructure. My question to the world is, to what extent would a military have to go to have such a low casualty rate of 2.7% in an exclusively urban warfare scenario against an enemy that has a civilian casualty strategy in place and a civilian population that sets a goal for martyrdom? Think about this. And they've maintained by far the lowest civilian casualty rate in the history of urban warfare, not even close.
Right.
That by urban warfare historical figures, there should have been over 1 million people killed in Gaza. You're never going to hear anyone talk about it, but it's literally right there. Anyone can research it and find it out. Just look it up. Just Google it. Do your own research. Find out for yourself. You don't have to believe me. Look it up and find out for yourself.
That is crazy. I mean, that just shows how much care they've taken to not. And, you know, my whole thing with some of these people I wish I could sit down to that are, you know, speaking negatively against Israel, especially, you know, people from the United States. I just want to be like, well, what do you want them to do? Like, I'm like, they never provide a solution. They never say, it's just more and more pressure on Israel, who at the end of the day need to defend their people, need to defend themselves. And they're really set up to fail. And I think that's why that system is set up the way it is, with the tunnels underground, underneath civilian homes. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to need to protect themselves to come get those hostages out from under those tunnels. And so lives will be lost. But I mean, the fact that you gave those numbers, that it's such a small percentage, shows how much they cared. And I mean, usually in battle and getting your own people out, like, people don't care. In other countries and other scenarios, it's just like, we're going to get our people, period. Since Hamas doesn't care about its own people and their end goal is, and even just say, what is their goal? To just completely decimate Israel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say it.
Why do the civilians support Hamas?
Their goal is death to Israel and death to America.
Okay. So that's why they stay there.
Look, the plight of the Palestinians is truly horrific. Not just in Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are living in camps
Yeah.
in the surrounding nations of Jordan that aren't allowed to have basic human rights. They're not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to work in many, many different professions. They live in refugee camps, and they have received from the UN under UNRWA an indefinite and perpetual refugee status that flies in the face of the way anything should work on behalf of any people, especially refugees. So they're held in this position, and really they're held as like a knife to the throat of Israel, demanding the law of return. So there are generations of refugees. It's unprecedented in history. There's never been anything like this before in history. It's never happened before that they've been not allowed to assimilate.
They're not allowed to assimilate?
They're not allowed to assimilate. And it's not only that they're not allowed, it's not only the countries around them that are saying it, it's UNRWA. It's the UN.
Because they're part of a pawn. They're a part of the scheme to try and get this narrative that you're seeing now. Tucker, and maybe we could show his clip, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. We can show both of those clips.
We can show the clip, just because these voices that are supposed to be pro-freedom, pro-Western democracy, and supposed to be grounded in what that actually looks like, are now coming out and trying to flip the script and make you think that if you stand with Israel, you're the bad guy. So let's show this clip of what he has to say, and then we'll comment on it.
These are some of the most dangerous statements that you can imagine, and I do want to explain why.
A sincere answer, a good faith answer. We may disagree. You may say, as a good friend of mine who's like totally deranged, but a good person, said to me yesterday, Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. You know, reading the talking point that apparently everyone, a bumper sticker that is for sale somewhere, I guess. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that means exactly, but how many Americans have been killed by Shia terrorism in my lifetime, which is 56 years? I can't think of any. I'm sure there have been some in the United States. There have been Shia terror attacks sponsored by Iran in the US. I can't think of any. There was 9/11. That was a Sunni terror attack. And then there's the drug epidemic, which has killed more than 1 million people during that same period.
What Tucker Carlson is saying here, he's using an either-or strategy, okay? And his equations couldn't be more flawed. And it's this statement and another one that are so extreme. He's first of all, it's inarguable that Iran is the greatest supporter of terror and terror proxies globally and has been for my entire life.
Right. And that's a fact.
It's inarguable. And I've never seen a bumper sticker. And the fact that he has a friend that said this and he's saying he's deranged, he's not deranged. Those are the facts. Let me ask you a question. Every president, including Obama and Biden and every president in my lifetime has agreed and done everything they can to hinder and halt Iran from getting a nuclear weapon because they're radical and they want to destroy Israel and the United States because of our value system. Not only here in the United States, globally, every Western country has been committed to that cause to the degree that we've all sanctioned Iran for decades. Okay? That's just fact. The UN sanctioned them because they're trying to develop nuclear weapons. It's inarguable. The UN, who's obviously biased against Israel, has also sanctioned Iran repeatedly. And we don't need to get into the UN. That's a whole other matter. But this statement is incredibly erroneous. And I want you to see that he's setting up. He does this twice, at least twice, throughout this stage. And it's important to understand this is a Christian event.
Yeah. That's
okay. This is a Christian event. Okay. And we can ask the question, should they be giving platform? And then we can talk about to people like Tucker and Dave Smith. They did a debate afterwards, but that's a whole nother question. We could address that. But what Tucker is doing, it's an either or strategy. He's saying simultaneously, while all of this stuff's been happening, people have been saying that Iran is exactly what it actually is, 1 million people have died here in the United States. And the strategy is either we address this threat or we address that threat. And it's insanity. Both are absolute threats to the people of the United States, and both should absolutely be addressed. It's not either or. You can't have a country out there that chants in their parliament every single day, death to America and death to the United States, and say that they're not a threat. And so he actually interviewed the president of Iran recently, and he asked him a question, a seemingly hard question. Why do you chant that every day? And he allowed this man to say to the American people, well, they don't really mean physical death, physical violence.
Oh.
They mean death to your way of life. So it's not really a violence thing.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let me ask you a question. Even if that were true, which it is not, you have to look, how do you know somebody? Is it by what they say or by what they do?
What they do.
Look at the violence. You can't tell me that Iran isn't committed to violence.
Yeah.
You don't try to develop a nuclear weapon because you don't intend that, and say that you're going to use it to blow other countries off the face of the earth because you're not committed to violence. They absolutely believe in violence. But even if it were true, as an American, are you okay with that? Are you okay with a country that we're not saying violent physical death. We just want death to your way of life as a country.
Still a huge
we
red
want
flag.
death to capitalism. We want death to Christianity. We want death. Like, are you okay with that? And Tucker's giving platform to this, right? And saying, oh, okay, it's not that bad. They're not a real threat. And by the way, we should either be focused on drug addiction in this country, or we should be focused on
which
this
was
threat.
so manipulative.
Why did he go that? Why did he
It's
go that
gaslighting and manipulation.
Because what he's coming around to, what he says that we didn't play here, and you guys can listen to it, and it's so subtle. He says, but when I say these things, I'm accused by a certain people group. He doesn't name them of being discriminatory against them. He's talking about anti-Semitism. People have called him an anti-Semite, and I'm not here to call him one or not. But what he comes around to, and this is the equation. What he's actually saying is we have to choose between foreign policy or the drug epidemic in our own countries. Both are important things, inarguably. And if you refute, the people that are refuting what I'm saying right here are wrongfully accusing me of anti-Semitism. So his equation is always bringing it back somehow to Israel and the Jews, which does merit the question.
I know.
But it's so subtle. He doesn't actually use the word anti-Semitic. He doesn't say Jews. He doesn't even say Israel in this sentence. But it's
obvious.
You have to look at what he is implying.
Right.
Think about it.
Let's watch the second clip.
Let's watch the second clip because it's way, way more subtle.
My question is, in your opinion, we have individuals in this country that are full citizens that are also full citizens of other countries. in your opinion, how can somebody pledge allegiance to two countries at the same time? And is that something that we should be allowing?
I mean, I think your question says it all. Obviously, that's absurd. I quote the New Testament, but I also refer to common sense when I say that no man can serve two masters. It's not possible. I only have one wife for that reason. You say to your wife, I'm going to take another wife, but I'm going to love you just as much. Nothing's going to change. My wife's going to look at me like, no, it's one wife. Because you can only really pledge your loyalty to one person or one country. That's just a fact. And there's also a sense, and this is relevant to me, and I know you're speaking about Israel, but it's not just Israel, to be honest. I think it's a huge problem. I think anybody, by the way, who serves in a foreign military should lose his citizenship immediately. There are a lot of Americans who've served in the IDF. They should lose their citizenship. There's a lot of Americans who've served in Ukraine, and they should lose their citizenship. You can't fight for another country and remain an American, period. Obviously. I mean, it's like not even, it's so funny how all of us have been cowed into being like, oh, that's hate speech. No, it's not. You don't hear hate in my voice because there isn't any. It's just an obvious recognition of the truth. But there's a more insidious thing, and I say it's not just Israel. I'm not just trying to like give myself cover. I'm being honest. There are a ton of countries that offer citizenship, actually, some of which I love. I have been offered citizenship in a couple different countries that I really like, and I thought about it. And then I thought, no, there's something about being lashed to the mast. Like everyone can see that America's in trouble. The demographic trends are really bad. And the country's decaying, its cities are falling apart. So you're like, oh, wow, maybe I should flee. And then I'm like, my ancestors are from here. My parents are buried right across from my kitchen. I'm staying here. And the second you make that decision in your head, like, I don't care what happens to America, I will be here. It totally changes your attitude. You're like, I don't even care. It's my country. And they've been here for so long and fought in all of these wars. My ancestors, and I'm sure yours, would be totally shocked by some of the conversations. Foreign flags in the Congress? Are you joking? Get out. And so, no, once you decide you're all in on your country, it really changes the way you approach everything. And by the way, it should be the baseline requirement. You shouldn't be allowed to serve in government if you're not a US citizen or you're a dual citizen. Are you joking? Of course not. And I would love to know what the justification is. And of course, there isn't one, which is why they're allowed to just write you off as some sort of like freak, some internet freak, hater, Nazi, whatever. No, I'm not. Just an American who loves my country, and I think it's fair to demand that the people running my country love it every bit as much as I do.
Okay, so a couple things here. Obviously, people shouldn't be allowed to have dual citizenship. Yeah. Okay. This is, again, it's what he's implying. Okay, what's the implication here? You got to ask yourself this question. First of all, he's using scripture. And what he's saying is, if you listen to what he's actually saying is, he says, I don't believe in dual citizen because I believe in the Bible. Literally says that. I don't believe in dual citizen because I don't believe in the Bible. And then he quotes a verse, okay?
Out of context.
And the equation, yes, we'll talk about that context too. And the equation, and he says, and because I'm married to one wife. What he's implying is, I don't believe in dual citizenship because I believe in the Bible and because I'm faithful in marriage. This is dangerous. And let me tell you something, Tuck. The guy that wrote half of the New Testament was a dual citizen. Name was Paul. And he actually boasted about it. He said, I'm all things to all people.
That's right.
To the Romans, I'm a Roman. To the Jews, I'm a Jew. He was a dual citizen. He wrote half the New Testament that you're misquoting here. He then goes on to talk about being, and so these should be things that we want. We should want people to believe in the Bible. We should want people to be faithful to their wives, right? So he's using these things with very manipulative speech. And then he misquotes this verse where he says, I believe in the Bible, and the Bible says that you can't serve two masters. Jesus wasn't talking politically at all. In fact, he avoided politics. When he was confronted by politics, he said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render unto God what is God's. He dealt with issues of the heart. But Tucker doesn't talk about the rest of the verse, which explicitly talks about what he means, which is you cannot serve two gods. You can't serve God and mammon. Yeah. What is mammon? Mammon, Tuck, is wealth. Mm-hmm. It's riches. It's the ways of the world. It's fame. And I wonder what the person that made that statement Jesus would say to Tucker Carlson. I'm not here to say that. I don't know. But I wonder what if he were to look at the life of this guy that's built an entire empire and is building an entire empire, multi-millionaire, et cetera, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying that, but Jesus might. Jesus might challenge him a little bit. Who is he going after mammon? Anyway, he just completely misquotes it and comes up with these equations that if you believe in dual citizenship, the implication is you don't believe in faithfulness to your wife. If you believe in dual citizenship, you don't believe in the Bible, which is absolutely crazy. And I can tell you, as a dual citizen, I'm a dual citizen of the United States and Israel. And this is where it gets really sad. When I was 16, my parents moved to Israel. And I became a citizen of Israel and a citizen of the United States. And there are many countries that that the United States has these agreements with where you can be a dual citizen and it is legal. And the reason is they share the same value system. When, like Great Britain, for instance, and I want you to just put this in context because he doesn't ever provide any context for this. Oh, it's just insane. If you served in a foreign military, I served in a foreign military. I served in the IDF. And when I served in the IDF, I was served in the IDF under the understanding that I was fighting for the same value systems as somebody, and in many times we've fought alongside of soldiers and trained alongside of soldiers, American soldiers. You're fighting for the same cause. You're going to tell me that somebody that has dual citizenship with the United States and Great Britain and served in the Gulf War in the trenches alongside, it doesn't matter the conflict, alongside American soldiers, you fought the same enemy for the same values and the same cause, but because it was a different military, even though it's legal and has been around for a long, long time, it should now be illegal. It's insanity. It's baseless. And it's all coming around again. There are many countries. I know you're talking about Israel, and you can look at everything about it. I actually think that guy was a plant. I don't know that, but the way he rattles off that question as if he memorized it and says it like as slowly and clearly as he possibly can, so everyone can understand what he's saying. I don't know, and I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but I just look at the whole thing with practicality. I'm like, this is absolutely insane. The unit that I served in. Just to talk, we don't talk about the values, the shared values. The unit that I served in the IDF was a rescue and save unit, and it was a civil rescue and save unit. Our base was, and they work very closely with Barry Siegel, by the way, and his organization to bring aid. The base that I worked on was, if you walked on the base, it looked like an earthquake hit there because it was just buildings that were built and then collapsed so you could learn how to work amongst the rubble and rescue people. That unit has gone around the world on over 30 missions to save lives of people in natural catastrophes. Mm-hmm. That literal unit. You can look it up online. They've saved over 250 lives, not in Israel, around the world. Actual saved the lives and helped many thousands of people. They were here in the United States after Katrina, helping out. They were even in countries like Turkey and Syria after the earthquake hit there. That unit from the IDF that he's saying, because I served in that unit and came here and helped you on American soil. I didn't come, but the unit after Katrina, you shouldn't be a citizen of this country anymore. It's absolutely insanity. What he's saying, what I am and have been, is legal. What he's saying isn't part of law. And it makes no sense.
And not only are they going there, but they're often the first on the ground, which is wild because it's not a lot of people in Israel. They can't really deploy a ton of resources to the rest of the world, but they care so much about preserving life. And it's such a fundamental value to Israeli society that they will send at their own expense into whatever natural disaster it is, their own people to try and rescue and preserve as many lives as possible. And that you don't hear that talked about.
And also, even if there was an exception to the rule, what if there was an exception to the rule? What if there was determined at some point that by and large, we shouldn't have this dual citizenship, and if you serve for, what if you were, but there could be some exceptions. Israel should be the exception, not the first one you name.
Right.
The people that came here and tried to help you and Katrina, the people that went to Syria and Turkey, who are enemies of the state, to save lives, those people you might make an exception for. How many Iranian soldiers came after Katrina?
Right.
How many Qatari soldiers came to help?
I mean, they're not, like we said, Hamas doesn't even really help their own civilians. They're using that money, which so much money has gone to that region and those people, and yet it's still in shambles because they're not using it to help life. They're using it to further their cause.
Absolutely. Yasser Arafat's daughter is worth $8 billion. Wow. He's the guy that started
Yasser
the whole
Arafat's
thing.
the founder of the Palestinian
PLO.
Authority. Yeah.
The PLO. He's the founder of the whole movement, the Palestine movement, where they coalesced.
Who was
tribes
trained
and
by Russia in propaganda.
He's a
and
terrorist.
Yeah.
He's not allowed in other countries in the region because he carried out terrorist plots, assassinations of prime ministers, so on and so forth. He's not allowed in Jordan and so on and so forth. His daughter's worth $8 billion that was gathered in foreign aid. Meanwhile, the people of Gaza live in abject poverty, and Israel is required to foot the bill on all accounts. Like, nobody's demanding that she help Gaza. The double standard, it is unthinkable how nonsensical it all is.
The double standard and then the demonization of Israel and the Jewish people that feeds the anti-Semitism across our country. That's what's blowing my mind. And to see it in the conservative camp, in the Christian camp, and I look at someone like Tucker or Candace, and I do question their biblical literacy and their spiritual depth. I mean, I can't judge that, but to quote a verse like that out of context, and even hearing her explanations of things biblically, I question it. And just pushing out the problem. What's so awful about what they are doing is that they have a huge audience and they've earned their trust. And so these people are looking at Tucker, and I go to these comments and they think Israel is the enemy, that Israel is manipulating America, and that Tucker is like this patriot that's doing the freedom of information. And, he's interviewing the president of Iran. It's like he's more truthful than the media, and people don't see the manipulation because he's underneath this disguise of, I'm a Christian, I have these values, and I care about America, and I care about you. And so it's very manipulative, and you have all of these Christians. That's why I want to do this episode, because they don't know the history of Israel. They don't know all the things that Israel's doing, because it's like no one in the media talks about it. And Israel really is being set up to be the bad guy. And the part of the fruit of that is this discrimination against Jewish people in our own country, which is crazy. The dehumanization of that people group is wrong. And I saw a clip of like a Jewish student. I think it was at Yale or Harvard or some like pristine university, and they're like having a protest and they won't even let him walk on campus. But they're letting other people walk in. And I'm like, why do we think that this is okay to devalue a people group, that we're teaching this to people? It just blows my mind.
And most of the Jews here in the United States are liberals.
I know.
Progressive liberals. Like at least 50% of them. And it's like, it's bizarre. And it really, it's like, but people don't stop and just ask the questions. Why am I being fed this? Why am I constantly why is Tucker's equation for both of these things? The first equation is, if you think Iran is a huge threat, as all of the rest of the world does, and everyone has known for many, many years, you don't care about the drug epidemic in this country. Oh, and by the way, Israel's bad. Like this is the equation. If you broke it down to just take away all the manipulative language. The second equation, I don't believe in dual citizenship. I know you're talking about Israel. There are other countries, but I know you're referring to Israel. I don't believe in it because I believe in the Bible and marriage. So essentially, if you believe in Bible and the marriage, you shouldn't support Israel, and you shouldn't support dual citizenship and all these things. It's so bizarre. And then you just go look at the comments.
The comments are so bad. Yeah.
It's like,
because they think that he's fighting for our freedom or something.
Well, and then he circles it around to that I'm a patriot and I'd give anything for this country and my family's best. So am I. I'm America first. And I believe that being America first is pro-Israel is being America first because they are our ally. We're fighting for the same cause. So it's really simple. But
well, I think we did a good job unpacking a lot. Though we could have done this over 15 hours and probably.
I feel like we did pretty good though. Like,
I just want to ask everyone who's watching or listening to just share it with someone or post this episode, because it's important to, you can tell we're just talking long form. We're not referencing all of these things, but everything can be fact checked, and we can't combat this without everyone sharing the episode, sharing the reels that we produce from this. It's important. It takes a team effort. So that's my request for this episode, is that
And
you
to
share
subscribe.
it. Yeah.
Like, because people subscribing, we never ask people to subscribe. And I realize every channel I watch that's being run well, they always ask every episode, because if you're like me, you'll watch a YouTube channel over and over and you won't hit subscribe because you don't think about it. So share this with people, comment, subscribe, because all of this pushes this out further, because we want to expand our reach, because there needs to be platforms that are having these conversations that are not biased, you know.
Voices for Truth. And go to the Arise podcast as well. They are going to continue producing great content. And so,
are you on all podcast platforms?
Yeah.
Okay. YouTube as well?
Yep.
Okay.
I watched it on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you.
We watch on YouTube.
And
Everyone's different.
I just want to say thank you guys so much, and also to your listeners and viewers. A big part of being engaged in the battle that's taking place, it's World War III right now, globally. Right now, it's a battle of information. We're this close, even in this country, to it's already happening in places, violent conflict, and hopefully it doesn't go there. The future of this country and the future of the world depends on what we do right now, all of us. And the first step is staying informed. And this is why you should be tuning in. You should be subscribing to podcasts like this that are going to keep you in the know. They're going to get you thinking. You're going to hear these strange statements and you're going to feel inspired because, yeah, I'm America. Yeah, I'm a patriot. But wait a minute. What does it have to do with Israel? What is this? You need to stay in the know. Now is the time to go deep on information and really do your research. So definitely tune in. And thank you guys so much for being engaged in this battle and giving voice to this.
Yeah, and I think it's just the note that I want to end on, just to our audience, just to kind of echo what he's saying, is that as believers, because most people who watch this are believers, I would just admonish you to understand that we need discernment in these times, and we need to test. The Bible says, test what is the spirit behind this. And so Jesus, from John 14 to John 16, he keeps talking to his disciples right before he goes to the cross. And he's saying, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit to you. He's the Spirit of truth. He will lead you into all truth. And in these times, we need the Holy Spirit to guide us and to give us wisdom. And we need to be knowledgeable about the Word of God. And one of the things I would just encourage all believers is to get in your secret place, get alone with God, and ask him to give you a download of wisdom and a revelation in his heart for Israel. Because once you tap into that, you realize it's like undeniable and you will see everything from a different perspective, but you have to have his heart on these matters. So I would just encourage you to do that. We need discernment. Just because someone says they're one thing doesn't mean that they're upholding these values. And so we have to use discernment, because there are wolves in sheep's clothing, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we don't know. And that's why we have to stand firm in the truth that God has given us. So I just want to encourage you with that. Thank you for listening today. Thank you so much for being here, Simeon, and thank you, Jonathan. And we'll see you next time on the Rebecca Weiss podcast.